The pandemic has caused an economic collapse, and that's an understatement.
Unemployment top of the list.
More than 22 million Americans have filed for unemployment.
10 million American workers have filed for unemployment.
Each day, we're waking up to the news of layoffs.
Massive job losses due to the pandemic.
Half of the world's workforce is on the edge.
2020, the year when a virus brought the world to a standstill. While the coronavirus pandemic forced countries to go under indefinite lockdowns, the world economy witnessed the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s. While millions lost their lives or their loved ones due to the novel coronavirus, others were scarred in different ways. Unemployment, job loss, layoffs, pay cuts, shutting down of businesses, furlough, depressed wages are terms that became all too common in a world ravaged by the Wuhan virus. In India, the GDP fell almost a quarter in the April to June period. A report by the International Labour Organization and the Asian Development Bank, published in August 2020, claimed that more than 4 million Indians below the age of 30 lost their jobs due to the pandemic. In May last year, the Indian government announced a stimulus package of 20 lakh crore rupees, or nearly 10% of GDP, to save the lockdown-battered economy.
ये पैकेज भारत की जीडीपी का करीब 10% है.
According to data released by CMIE, the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, India's unemployment rate rose sharply to 9.1% in December 2020, highest since the beginning of India's recovery from the lockdown in June. No continent on the planet could steer clear of the unprecedented economic shock, and despite the pandemic still raging, a global recovery is underway. So what is the outlook for India? How quickly can the Indian economy return to pre-pandemic levels? Can the union budget for 2021-2022 boost employment? Will it help revive ailing sectors? What is the Indian startup ecosystem hoping for? One thing is certain, people are pinning high hopes on the forthcoming budget to be presented by India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on the 1st of February. Even with the vaccine being rolled out, economic recovery could be years away for some sectors. While some sectors are battered, others are completely beaten by COVID-19 disruption. With just days to go before the all-important budget is announced, let's look at what citizens and key sectors are expecting from the government. First major industry to take a direct hit by the pandemic is the health sector. India has recorded over 10.6 million coronavirus cases, the second highest in the world after the United States, putting its healthcare system under immense pressure. Doctors, nurses, carers, and paramedics are facing an unprecedented workload and with no end in sight. India, which was not manufacturing even a single personal protective equipment or PPE kit at the start of the pandemic, went on to become a manufacturing hub of essential kits. Just a few months into the pandemic, the country started producing over 4.5 lakh PPE kits daily. Be it manufacturing PPE kits, ventilators, laboratory test kits, masks or hand sanitizers, India, like other countries, witnessed a new market for these types of products. This is a lab where an indigenous ventilator is being tested. Originally created by a robotics scientist and a neurosurgeon to help India's poor, a toaster-sized ventilator is offering hope in the country's fight against the coronavirus pandemic.
So we wanted something which was very user-friendly which even lay persons themselves could operate it with minimal training, and it did not require wall oxygen and wall compressed air to make it run. It could run very frugally on minimum amount of power supply for extended periods of time.
Coronavirus patients who require hospitalization experience a dip in blood oxygen levels, making medical oxygen crucial for treatment. Each critically ill patient can need up to 10 jumbo cylinders a day, and hospitals struggle to meet the demand for oxygen cylinders and beds. Before the pandemic, 750 metric tons of medical-grade oxygen was produced in India. But during the COVID-19 crisis, India started producing about 3,000 metric tons of medical-grade and about 2,000 metric tons of industrial-grade oxygen. Sectors such as steel, glass and pharmaceuticals require industrial oxygen for their production processes. Even after decades of high growth, India's spending on healthcare has been a meager 1.3% of its GDP. Experts believe the country is likely to double health spending in the next fiscal year, with the aim of raising expenditure in the sector to 4% of GDP in the coming 4 years. The government may raise India's health spending from the current year's projected spending of 626 billion rupees to 1.2 to 1.3 trillion rupees. The new healthcare plan is likely to be unveiled on the 1st of February, when the budget is presented. The government of India also needs to incentivize public-private partnerships to Make in India and Startup India programs. This will also create jobs. Manufacturing has traditionally played a key role in the economic growth of countries. It is also an important employment generator and a key factor to pull people above the poverty line. In other Asian countries like Korea, Indonesia and China, manufacturing has contributed 20 to 40% of GDP. In contrast, Indian manufacturing sector's contribution to GDP is about 18%. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed the inherent weaknesses in the existing global supply chain and the over-reliance on China's manufacturing industry. As more and more companies look to diversify their supply chains away from China, it could prove to be a blessing in disguise for the Indian manufacturing industry. In line with its Atmanirbhar Bharat or Self-Reliant India campaign, the Indian government has put manufacturing at the heart of its reform initiatives.
विश्व की आज की स्थिति हमें सिखाती है कि इसका मार्ग एक ही है, आत्मनिर्भर भारत.
Initiatives like Make in India and Vocal for Local have gained focus during the pandemic. From smartphones to TV panels, circuit boards to electric cars, the government has put into place targeted policies to strengthen electronics manufacturing in the past year. In June 2020, the Indian government unveiled a 50,000 crore rupee scheme to bring electronics manufacturing to the country. This move is aimed at making India a global manufacturing hub for electronics. The automotive and related ancillary sector is included in the promised production-linked incentive scheme. Electric mobility is another major theme and a key priority area for the government. Tesla, an electric vehicle maker that is led by American billionaire Elon Musk, registered as a subsidiary company in Bengaluru early this year, ahead of a planned introduction of its electric cars in India. As Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman gets ready to present her third union budget, the auto industry hopes it will assist them in recovering from the pandemic-induced economic shock. It wants rationalization of tax structure and scrappage policy. With work from home becoming the new normal last year, the focus of the Union Budget 2021 will also be on salaried employees, many of whom are now working remotely. The Finance Ministry might increase the standard deduction limit. Standard deduction allows for a flat deduction from income of a salaried individual towards expenses that would be incurred in relation to his or her employment. At present, the standard deduction for salaried people is 50,000 rupees. According to the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, this amount should be increased to 1 lakh rupees, taking into account the work-from-home culture that results in steeper electricity bills, among other things. An increase in standard deduction limit will ease the tax burden and put more money in the taxpayers' hands. To make a better home ecosystem, the Government of India is also reportedly contemplating a reduction in taxes and duties levied presently on internet equipment and accessories such as Wi-Fi routers and internet modems in the upcoming budget. Additionally, the pandemic has brought into focus the necessity of having a safety net when it comes to healthcare costs. Analysts expect that there could be an increase in the deduction offered on Mediclaim premium under Section 80D. Section 80D of the IT Act provides a deduction to the extent of 25,000 rupees in respect of the premium paid towards an insurance on the health of self, spouse and dependent children. This could be increased to 50,000 rupees. Additionally, they could realign income rates and slabs. The current limit has remained unchanged since financial year 2014 to 2015, and experts believe this may be hiked from 2.5 lakh rupees to 5 lakh rupees.
At a time when the government will be looking to pull the economy out of the COVID-induced recession, it will be interesting to see if these taxpayer-friendly measures actually materialize.
From work from home to school from home. Budget 2021 is crucial for public school education in India. The pandemic has severely impacted education in India, with over 200 million children losing out a full year of schooling. Teachers too have been severely impacted. Though the government has allowed phased reopening of schools, the final decision will be taken by state governments. Many schools have reopened partially, on voluntary basis for classes 9 to 12. As per a study conducted in 2018 to 2019, only 28% of government schools had computers and only 12% had an internet connection. Clearly, a lot more needs to be done so they can incorporate digital learning.
During the lockdown, when we used to study at home, many people used to face network issues, so we were not able to understand properly. Connection that there is when one teaches by physically being present, that was not there because at times the teacher's internet connection was bad or our connection was bad.
There is an increased need for investing in virtual forms of education and digital training for teachers. Will schools be able to accomplish this? It has been a rough year for India's aviation sector, with the sector seeing zero passenger movement from March until May. Airlines were forced to take cost-cutting measures like firings or pay cuts in 2020. Domestic flight operations resumed in May after a gap of 2 months, and the airlines were initially allowed to operate no more than 33% of their pre-COVID domestic flights. Though the government has allowed domestic flights to run at 80% capacity since December, Indian Airlines are expected to post a net loss of 21,000 crore rupees. It is believed that the sector will require funding of at least 37,000 crore rupees till 2023 to recover from the losses. As airlines try to find their feet again, the aviation sector is expecting financial aid and reduction in levies and taxes in the immediate near term. Much like aviation, tourism was crippled by the pandemic. The tourism industry is one of the largest industries. It accounts for 6.23% of India's gross domestic product and provides employment to 8.78% of the population. It is estimated that the sector suffered losses of 1.25 lakh crore rupees during calendar year 2020. The sector supplements others, including travel, hospitality, and restaurant industries. COVID-19 jabs will eventually help tourism start again, but the sector requires a path-breaking budget. In its wish list ahead of the budget, the tourism sector has asked for industry status by including it in the concurrent list. The tourism industry has also proposed creation of a National Tourism Council of Chief Ministers, headed by the Prime Minister, along with the Tourism Minister.
While the tough lockdowns upended a majority of industries, some sectors managed to find unique opportunities. COVID-19 has proven to be a boon for e-commerce companies and the internet infrastructure that supports it. Whether it's about providing seamless travel plans, online payment apps, telemedicine, getting safety alerts at your fingertips, and even contact tracing of corona patients, the IT and ITES sector was the biggest gainer, and the pandemic accelerated the shift towards a more digital world. India is the third largest startup nation in the world after the US and China. According to a NASSCOM report, nearly 40% startups in the country were forced to halt operations in May 2020 due to the pandemic. The startup ecosystem has huge expectations from the upcoming union budget to help them with post-pandemic recovery. On January the 16th, in a virtual event of Prarambh Startup India International Summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced a Startup India seed fund worth 1,000 crore rupees to enable startups to raise initial funding. This announcement signals the government's intent on providing growth stimulus to the sector's ecosystem. Come the 1st of February, and the stakeholders will be looking for government support in helping ease of access to capital, encouraging domestic investment, environment, and reducing regulatory and compliance burden on startups.
MSMEs में इक्विटी और इनोवेशन को प्रमोट करने के लिए हमने विभिन्न फंड शुरू किए हैं। टेक्नोलॉजी ड्रिवन फोर्थ इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन, इसमें हमारे एमएसएमईज के लिए हम कई बातों पर फोकस कर रहे हैं, जैसे विभिन्न डिजिटल लैंडिंग प्लेटफॉर्म्स और प्रोडक्ट्स के इस्तेमाल से छोटे उद्यमियों को एक्सेस टू क्रेडिट कराने की व्यवस्था रही है। इंडस्ट्री के साथ मिलकर स्किलिंग, अपस्किलिंग और रीस्किलिंग के विभिन्न प्रोग्राम्स द्वारा फ्यूचर रेडी इंडस्ट्री रिलेवेंट स्किल सेट तैयार करने के प्रयत्न किए जा रहे हैं।
There is a lot of talk about the introduction of a vaccine cess in the union budget. According to private estimates, the total expenditure on the country's vast and ambitious COVID-19 vaccination rollout, comprising logistics, amounts to 60,000 to 65,000 crore rupees. On the 3rd of January, India approved 2 coronavirus vaccines for emergency use. Both Covishield and Covaxin are 2-dose vaccines, and India would need 60 million doses to fully cover all its essential workers. Public health advocates argue that the vaccine should be free for all individuals, at least till the time the pandemic rages on.
पहले फेज में हम अपने 30 मिलियन हेल्थ और फ्रंटलाइन वर्कर्स का वैक्सीनेशन कर रहे हैं। भारत की स्पीड का अंदाजा आप इसी से लगा सकते हैं कि सिर्फ 12 दिन में 12 डेज में भारत ने अपने 2.3 मिलियन से ज्यादा हेल्थ वर्कर्स को वैक्सीनेट कर चुका है। अगले कुछ महीनों में हम अपने करीब 300 मिलियन बुजुर्ग और कोमॉर्बिडिटी वाले मरीजों के वैक्सीनेशन का टारगेट पूरा कर लेंगे।
To cover a population of 1.3 billion people, India will need to budget a substantial amount of its expenditure towards vaccines. So the question is, how will Budget 2021 fund India's vaccine program? It won't be surprising if the Indian government introduces a coronavirus cess or surcharge on individual taxpayers in the higher income groups. With the COVID-19 vaccine rollout and a decline in coronavirus cases, the year 2021 has started on a positive note for India. This, along with a well-timed stimulus from the upcoming budget, will drive India towards the much-anticipated state of normalcy.